I think it's very interesting that you've written all these novels, and your Oscar comes when you adapt something that's utterly not yours. You must find this slightly odd as well. How are you lured into it, and have you ever adapted someone else's work before?
No, I actually did have a little go a few years ago with a very well-known book, but it didn't turn out for various
Was it a Hollywood
reasons.
project?
It was a Hollywood project. And
as long as you're not defining what it was, perhaps it would be interesting, actually, to compare the kind of independence that you had, you know, with this British project, with what the studio process was like. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I was co-writing with a friend this other project, and we had a lot of people to deal with, and it was quite a difficult book to adapt, and there was I guess a sappy way of doing it and an interesting way of doing it, and it wasn't the way that we wanted to go, and it never got made. It never will get made.
How many times have you gone down the studio path with your projects, or as a screenwriter in general?
Well, not very often. I'd say that was the only time. The books I've sold to
many
studios, yeah,
and they've come out okay.
Yeah, I think they've come out okay. But I don't really feel I've ever gone on a journey with them. They just disappear, and they either come back with some people attached and the film ready to go, or they don't.
How much have they consulted with you, like on High Fidelity, for example?
Well, they consult. I mean, it's a strange process, I think, because they consult and you talk and you think, okay, that sounds good, and you sell it, and then, you know, a year later, everything's changed anyway. So, what's the point of the consultation process? I think, really, the moment you sell a book, you know that you're letting yourself in for some kind of turmoil, and my view is that a film is nothing to do with my book, and I want to support the people creatively when they get to that point, but actually films and books run parallel to each other. A book doesn't get turned into a film. A book doesn't get turned into anything, it just sits there.
Well, in the case of High Fidelity, obviously, that was a case where they were turning it into an American version of what you had written, so culturally it was so different, and yet they actually managed to keep the essence of what you had done. Did you feel that they had?
Really, I think it was incredibly close to the book, way beyond anything I could have expected once they'd made that decision. And I always think of High Fidelity as a kind of perfect way to go in some senses, because it fell into the hands of people to whom the book meant a great deal, and
that's what you hope.
Yeah,
and to whom the music meant a great deal, who obviously cared about the music.
But they were younger than me, which meant their points of reference were slightly different. But I would rather that they kept to their own vision, and because that means that the book is personal to them. So those cultural points of reference got shifted, first of all to America, and secondly shifted 5 years forward.
And with did they hang on to much of the music that you referred to, or none of it?
There were crossovers, but no, I would say, you know, I was 19 when punk started, and those guys were 12 when punk started. So
God Save the Queen doesn't have quite the same.
Exactly. But they had their own versions, and that's what you want, I think. You want people who care enough to want their own versions. You don't want someone who's literal-minded about it, who doesn't get it, but thinks, oh, it says this in the book, so I'm going to keep it in.
Now, About a Boy turned out very well also.
Really well.
Now that's much more of a close, I thought, much more close adaptation.
Yes, and the changes they made because they needed more cinematically, and I completely understood that.
Now, were you more involved in that one?
No, I was more involved in High Fidelity, I would say. I spoke to Chris and Paul Weitz a few times, and I don't know, I didn't feel as involved with the project. I really liked the film, and I really liked them. I think for some reason Stephen Frears likes book writers to be involved. I think. So I was going to script meetings and stuff before they started shooting, and High Fidelity was just a very happy project in terms of my relationships with the people, in that I see Devi, who wrote it, most of it all the time, and I see Stephen, and a lot came out of it for me.
Now, you started out your career with Fever Pitch, and you did write the screenplay for that, but that was the British project.
Yeah.
I never read Fever Pitch. Do they have baseball in England?
No, the English Fever Pitch is about
soccer. Thank you.
Fever Pitch was a memoir. The book was a memoir, and it was about growing up an obsessive sports fan, and what is it that sustains a relationship with a club from boyhood through to adulthood. So in order to become a film, it had to be something very different, and I tried in the screenplay to condense some of the themes in the book into a central relationship. And then it wasn't the book that got adapted, it was the English film that got remade when
the English film was with Colin Firth,
yeah.
and that was a success locally in England? Or
yeah, small success.
More or less,
yeah.
Okay. And then, now, how did you feel about the big Hollywood version?
Well,
pretty far away, I have to imagine.
Well, it wasn't a million miles away from the film that we made. That's what I'm saying. It was a remake of a movie, not an adaptation of a book. I didn't mind it at all. Americans have a very intense relationship with sport, and they just happen not to have an intense relationship with that particular sport. So it really doesn't matter to me. It's about the feelings involved with following a club.